The power goes out. It's January. The temperature outside is in the teens. You think you'll be fine? It's your own house. You know where everything is. You've handled worse. And then 6 hours later, you're shivering under 3 blankets, wondering where it all went wrong. Most of the time, it comes down to the same handful of decisions made in the first few hours. Here are the 9 critical mistakes that make people freeze indoors during a power outage. Mistake 9. Assuming the house will stay warm on its own. A lot of people know the power went out and do exactly nothing about heat for the first several hours, operating on the assumption that the house is already warm and will stay that way. That assumption gets tested fast. According to heating professionals, the average home will stay reasonably warm for about 8 to 12 hours after losing power. And that number assumes moderate outdoor temperatures and decent insulation. Once outdoor temperatures drop below freezing, the house loses heat significantly faster. In sub-freezing conditions with wind, a poorly insulated home can drop several degrees per hour. A well-insulated modern home might lose only about 1 degree Fahrenheit per hour under calm conditions, when outdoor temps hover around 20 degrees Fahrenheit, but add wind chill and old single-pane windows, and that rate can accelerate to 2 or 3 degrees per hour. The thermal mass of your house, the concrete floors, the brick walls, the accumulated warmth absorbed by furniture and walls, does buy time. This is real, but it is not infinite, and it diminishes faster than most people expect. The math is straightforward and unforgiving. The greater the temperature difference between inside and outside, the faster heat flows from where it is to where it isn't. A house at 68 degrees Fahrenheit, with outdoor temperatures at 5 degrees Fahrenheit, is losing heat at a dramatically faster rate than the same house on a 35 degrees Fahrenheit day. The mistake isn't just waiting too long to act, it's waiting at all. Every hour you spend not managing your heat situation is an hour you cannot get back. If the outdoor temperature is well below freezing and the outage looks like it could last more than a few hours, treating it as a real emergency from the start, not after you've already gotten cold, is the difference between managing the situation and scrambling to recover from it. Heat is easier to keep than to regain. Once the indoor temperature has dropped to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, rewarming people, especially the elderly, infants, or anyone with cardiovascular or respiratory conditions, becomes significantly harder without a reliable heat source. The body works over time to maintain its core temperature, and that effort exhausts reserves that are better spent on everything else. The time to act is before that point, not after. One practical thing worth knowing: a tent erected inside your warmest interior room, even a cheap camping tent with sleeping bags inside, creates a micro-environment that holds body heat far more effectively than trying to warm the entire room. It sounds absurd. It works, and emergency preparedness professionals recommend it. The physics are the same as a sleeping bag. You're reducing the volume of air your body has to heat, which means your body heat actually accumulates rather than diffusing into the surrounding space. This isn't a last resort. It's a first resort that most people never think of because it looks silly. Mistake 8. Running a generator indoors, or too close to the house. Let's be clear about this one because it is not a minor inconvenience. It's a documented cause of death. Every year in the United States, people die from carbon monoxide poisoning caused by running portable generators indoors or in garages during power outages. The U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission estimated that portable generators cause approximately 85 deaths per year from carbon monoxide poisoning, with the vast majority occurring at residential locations. More than 81% of those deaths happen in homes. Carbon monoxide is colorless, odorless, and tasteless. There is no sensory warning that it's building up. Early symptoms, headache, dizziness, nausea, are easily mistaken for the flu or for dehydration. At high enough concentrations, a person can lose consciousness before registering that anything is wrong. According to the CDC, carbon monoxide poisoning can affect a person so quickly that someone who has fallen asleep in a CO-affected environment may never wake up. The rule from the CPSC and the CDC is straightforward. A portable generator must be placed at least 20 feet from the house, with the exhaust pointed away from windows, doors, and vents. Not in the garage, not in the basement, not in the shed, Not just outside the garage door with the door cracked open. 20 feet outside, exhaust pointed away. This is the specific number that CPSC research identified as providing adequate dispersion. Opening a window or door does not provide adequate ventilation. The CPSC specifically states that even with doors and windows open, indoor CO can still build to lethal levels when a generator is operating in an enclosed or semi-enclosed space. One portable generator, according to CPSC data, can produce carbon monoxide at a rate equivalent to hundreds of cars. The engine is small, but the CO output per unit of fuel burned is significant in the context of a residential space. The exhaust from a generator positioned in a garage, basement, or immediately outside a window will find its way into the living space. The 20-foot rule exists because it was determined through testing to be the distance at which the exhaust disperses enough to prevent dangerous indoor accumulation under most conditions. Between 2004 and 2013, only 15 of the 526 generator-related carbon monoxide deaths in homes were caused by machines being used outside. The rest were being used indoors or in partially enclosed spaces. This mistake is not rare, not the result of ignorance in most cases, and not forgivable in its consequences. The warning labels have been required on all portable generators since 2007. People read the labels and make the decision anyway, usually because it's cold, dark, and inconvenient to go 20 feet from the house. That calculation has a body count. Carbon monoxide poisoning can kill in minutes. A portable generator can produce the same amount of CO as hundreds of cars. U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. Mistake 7. Not having a carbon monoxide detector or having one with dead batteries. Closely related to the generator issue is this. Even if you're not using a generator, a power outage often leads people to fire up other combustion-based heat sources. Gas stoves, propane heaters, charcoal grills, wood stoves, and each of these can produce carbon monoxide if improperly used or if ventilation is compromised. A battery-powered or battery backup carbon monoxide detector is not optional. It is the one thing that can tell you the invisible, odorless thing is accumulating before you lose consciousness. The CDC recommends installing CO alarms on every level of the home and outside sleeping areas. Battery backup is essential specifically because during a power outage, when you're most likely to be using combustion heat sources, a detector that relies on household current is completely useless. The entire point of the device fails at the exact moment it's most needed. A detail worth mentioning: CO detectors have lifespans. Most last between 5 and 7 years, depending on the manufacturer. An old detector that reads green is not necessarily functional. The date is usually printed on the back of the unit. If yours is older than 7 years and you've never replaced it, you may be operating without protection while believing you have it. The sequence of events in a carbon monoxide emergency during a winter outage goes like this. Power goes out, person uses an improvised heat source, CO builds up, person gets a headache and thinks it's stress or tiredness from a long day, person lies down to rest, person never gets up. A working CO detector breaks that chain at the second step. Replacing the batteries once a year and checking the device's expiration date costs almost nothing compared to what it prevents. There's one more thing worth addressing here. Some people have CO detectors and know it, but couldn't tell you where they are, whether they work, or when the batteries were last changed. The detector exists as a vague safety net somewhere in the house. That is meaningfully different from actually having a functional, correctly placed detector. Knowing the device is there is not the same as the device doing its job. Verify, test, replace batteries, check the date. Do it now, not when the power is already out. Mistake 6. Staying in a large, open space instead of concentrating in one room. The house is 2,000 square feet. 2 people are trying to heat it during an outage using body heat, blankets, and maybe a single emergency heat source. That is a losing proposition in cold weather, and most people figure this out only after they've spent several hours being unsuccessful at it. Body heat is real. 2 adults generate roughly 200 to 250 watts of heat between them under resting conditions, the equivalent of a few incandescent light bulbs. In a small, enclosed room, that heat accumulates. In a large open living room or a drafty multi-room house where interior doors are left open, the heat disperses faster than it's generated, and you end up cold in a large, warm-feeling space that is actually not warm at all. The correct move is to choose the smallest interior room in the house, preferably one without exterior windows, or with south-facing windows for daytime sun gain, and consolidate there. Close all interior doors to the rest of the house. Draft-proof the door of the room you're in with rolled towels, blankets, or anything that blocks the gap at the bottom. Bring sleeping bags, blankets, pets, and everyone who needs to stay warm into that space. This isn't just folk wisdom. The Red Cross and the CDC both advise this approach explicitly. An interior bathroom or a bedroom with 1 or 2 exterior walls loses heat to the outside far more slowly than an open living room with 4 exterior walls, a large picture window, and a vaulted ceiling. Every square foot you're not actively occupying is a square foot that's pulling warmth away from the space you're trying to keep livable. The temptation to roam the house, check on things, and generally treat the situation as normal is real, and it works against you. Movement through the house creates drafts. Opening and closing interior doors lets cold air from unoccupied rooms mix with warmer air in your occupied space. The discipline required is to pick a room, commit to it, and minimize movement outside of it. If you have a fireplace or wood stove in one room, that room is obviously the right choice, and the decision is made for you. If not, pick the smallest interior room, set up your emergency warm zone inside it, and consider it your base of operations for the duration. A tent or sleeping bag inside that room takes the strategy one step further, and yes, it really does work. It works because physics does not care how silly it looks. Mistake 5. Wearing one big heavy layer instead of multiple loose ones. This one runs counter to instinct. When it's cold, the natural impulse is to find the biggest, warmest coat or blanket and wrap up in it. The problem is that a single heavy layer has one critical vulnerability. If it gets damp, from sweat, from condensation, from spilled liquids, from anything, its insulating value collapses, and you start losing heat faster than you would have in lighter layers that stayed dry. The principle of layered clothing for cold weather survival has been established and refined over decades of outdoor safety research and military cold weather operations. The American Red Cross specifically states that layers of loose-fitting, lightweight, warm clothing will keep you warmer than a bulky sweater. The physiology behind it is straightforward. Multiple layers trap air between them, and still air is one of the most effective natural insulators. A single heavy garment provides insulation differently. It tends to compress under body weight and movement, reducing the air pockets, and its moisture-wicking properties are worse than a thoughtfully layered system. Start with a moisture-wicking base layer against the skin. This is the most important layer because its job is to pull sweat away from your body, rather than letting moisture sit against your skin and cool you down. Cotton is the wrong choice for a base layer because it absorbs moisture and holds it. Wool or synthetic materials perform significantly better. Add an insulating middle layer, wool or fleece, something that holds warmth even if slightly damp. An outer layer over that traps everything and blocks whatever cold air movement exists in the room. Extremities matter as much as the core. Wool socks, insulated slippers, gloves, and, especially, a knit hat worn while sleeping. A significant portion of body heat escapes through the head, particularly during sleep when you're generating less active heat. A simple hat costs nothing and makes a measurable difference in overnight warmth retention during a power outage. And then there is the matter of staying dry, which deserves its own emphasis. If clothing gets wet, from sweat generated by physical activity, from spills, from anything, change it immediately, even if what you're changing into feels lighter. Wet fabric against cold skin dramatically accelerates heat loss and is one of the primary pathways to hypothermia in indoor cold weather situations. This is not an outdoor scenario exclusive. People have developed dangerous hypothermia in their own homes during extended winter outages by staying in damp clothing because it seemed like the inconvenience of changing wasn't worth it. It is always worth it. Tight-fitting clothing is also worth avoiding in cold conditions. Tight garments restrict circulation, and circulation is how your body distributes heat from the core to the extremities. Circulation restricted by tight clothing means hands and feet get colder faster, regardless of how many layers are piled on top. Mistake 4. using the gas oven or stove as a heat source. When the power goes out and the house is getting cold, a lot of people look at the gas range, which still works without electricity on most models, and think, that's a heat source. Leave the oven door open, run it for a while, warm the kitchen up. It sounds reasonable. It is not. And emergency management agencies have been saying so for years, without it fully penetrating the public consciousness. The first problem is carbon monoxide. Gas stoves and ovens produce carbon monoxide as a byproduct of combustion. In a well-ventilated kitchen during normal cooking use, this isn't a significant issue because the CO disperses quickly and cooking periods are short. But running an oven as a space heater, with the door open for extended periods in a house with reduced ventilation because you're actively trying to keep cold air out, creates exactly the conditions where CO accumulates to dangerous levels. You've deliberately sealed the space to retain warmth, then introduced a combustion source that produces a gas that will fill that sealed space. The Minnesota Department of Health explicitly lists gas ovens as a carbon monoxide hazard in their emergency guidance and advises against using them to heat a home. The same guidance appears from the Red Cross, the CDC, and state emergency management agencies across the country. This is not an edge case concern. It is a documented cause of death during winter power outages, and it happens repeatedly because the logic of the mistake feels sound to the person making it. The second problem is fire risk. Using a stove as a heat source means leaving an open flame or a high heat element unattended or semi-attended for extended periods. In conditions where you're tired, possibly stressed, moving around the house less, and maybe operating on reduced sleep, distractions happen. Things get left near the stove. The scenario that leads to a residential fire during a winter outage often involves someone improvising a heat source and then losing track of it. There are propane heaters specifically designed for indoor use, built with automatic low-oxygen shutoff valves and other safety features. The Mr. Heater line of indoor-rated propane heaters, for example, includes a tip-over shutoff and an oxygen depletion sensor that cuts the unit off before CO reaches dangerous levels. These devices exist specifically because people need supplemental heat sources during outages, and they were engineered with that use case in mind. Use the tool that was designed for the job. The gas oven was designed to cook food. It was not designed to replace your furnace. Mistake 3. Drinking alcohol to warm up. This is a persistent myth, reinforced by movies, by the visual shorthand of St. Bernard rescue dogs with brandy barrels around their necks, which, for the record, is not actually how St. Bernard rescue dogs worked historically. The barrel is an invention from an 18th century painting, and by the simple fact that alcohol does produce a genuine physical sensation of warmth. The sensation is real. What it represents physiologically is the opposite of what you want happening during a cold weather emergency. Here's what alcohol actually does in cold conditions. It dilates the peripheral blood vessels near the skin's surface, which draws warm blood from the body's core outward to the skin. This creates a real sensation of warmth because blood is flowing closer to the skin. Your skin registers warmth. The problem is that this warmth is heat being drawn from your core and radiated away from your body into the surrounding environment. While your skin tells your brain that things are fine, your core temperature is falling. The Virginia Department of Health specifically advises avoiding alcoholic beverages during cold weather emergencies because alcohol causes the body to lose heat faster. The CDC echoes this guidance. Alcohol also impairs judgment and coordination. Two things you need to be operating at full capacity when you're managing a genuine cold weather emergency, making decisions about heat sources, pipe protection, whether to shelter in place or leave, and whether elderly or vulnerable people in your household are showing early signs of hypothermia. It's also worth noting that alcohol can suppress the body's shivering response. Shivering is uncomfortable, but it is your body's involuntary mechanism for generating heat through muscle movement. Suppressing it feels like a relief. It is not. Caffeine in large quantities also has effects on peripheral circulation that can be counterproductive in cold conditions, though this is a smaller concern than alcohol. The genuinely useful warm beverage during a cold weather outage is warm broth, herbal tea, or warm water. The warmth from ingesting a warm liquid raises core temperature from the inside in a direct and beneficial way. The warmth from alcohol is physiological misdirection. It is your body being tricked into releasing heat while signaling that everything is fine. One of those is helping you. The other is working against you while you enjoy the sensation. In a genuine emergency, that distinction matters. Mistake 2. Letting the house get so cold the pipes freeze. This mistake tends to feel like a personal warmth issue and turn into a structural catastrophe. Frozen pipes burst. Burst pipes create water damage that can cost thousands of dollars to repair, damage walls, floors, ceilings, insulation, and electrical systems, and render a home uninhabitable long after the power has been restored. What started as a difficult few days becomes a months-long repair project. Pipes in exterior walls, in unheated basements and crawl spaces, in garages, and in cabinet spaces under sinks on exterior walls are the most vulnerable. In freezing outdoor conditions, uninsulated pipes in those locations can begin freezing in as little as 6 hours. The damage doesn't announce itself. You don't hear the ice forming. You often don't know a pipe has burst until water starts appearing somewhere after the temperature rises and the ice melts. The standard preventive steps during a winter power outage are well established. Keep water moving by letting faucets drip slowly. Even a small trickle significantly reduces the risk of freezing because flowing water requires much lower temperatures to freeze than still water. Open cabinet doors under kitchen and bathroom sinks to allow the warmer interior air to reach the pipes inside those cabinets. If the outage is expected to last more than 24 hours with outdoor temperatures well below freezing, know where your main water shutoff valve is and consider using it, then open faucets to drain the lines. The tipping point for serious pipe risk is when indoor temperatures approach 40 degrees Fahrenheit in the rooms where pipes run. Below that threshold, pipes in exterior walls or unheated spaces become a real and time-sensitive concern. This is another reason why managing your indoor temperature proactively, rather than letting the house cool until you're focused only on your own comfort, matters for protecting the structure itself. People sometimes become so focused on personal warmth strategies that they don't track the house temperature, and they discover the pipe problem only when they hear a sound or see water damage. The warmth situation and the pipe situation are connected, and letting one get out of control usually means the other follows. Mistake 1. Not having any of this prepared before the outage. Everything on this list, the extra blankets, the layering system, the working CO detector with fresh batteries, the indoor rated propane heater, the knowledge of where the main water shutoff is, the plan for which room to consolidate in, is significantly easier to execute if you already have it ready before the power goes out. Significantly easier, by a factor that is hard to overstate. Power outages during winter storms happen with enough regularity in most parts of the country that treating preparation as optional is a deliberate choice with predictable consequences. Winter Storm Uri in February 2021 knocked out power to approximately 4.5 million Texas homes and businesses, a state where most residents had no cold weather emergency preparation because severe winter outages hadn't historically been a common threat there. Hundreds of people died. The failures were partly systemic and partly individual, but the individual failures were consistent. No backup heat source, no blankets appropriate for indoor cold, no CO detectors, no preparation of any kind for a scenario that had been predicted by weather services days in advance. The time to check whether your carbon monoxide detector is functional, correctly placed, and within its operational lifespan is a normal Tuesday in October, not at 11 p.m. during a winter storm when the power has just gone out. The time to stock extra blankets, identify your warmest interior room, buy an indoor rated space heater, and locate your water shutoff is before the emergency. Emergency managers have consistently identified the gap between a storm warning and a storm's actual impact as the window most people fail to use effectively. Hardware stores empty of generators within 24 hours of a major storm forecast. Grocery stores lose batteries, flashlights, and bottled water well before the storm arrives. People who prepare after the warning is issued are competing with everyone else who also waited. People who prepared before the warning didn't have to compete. The American Red Cross recommends a basic emergency kit that includes extra blankets or sleeping bags, a battery-powered or hand-crank radio, flashlights with extra batteries, a first aid kit, and at least a 3-day supply of food and water. None of this is expensive or logistically complicated. All of it is most useful when it already exists in your house before you need it. A power outage during extreme cold is one of the situations that punishes unpreparedness most directly because the primary consequence, being cold, progressively degrades cognitive function, manual dexterity, motivation, and energy. It becomes harder to address the problem as the problem worsens. A person who is already cold, tired, and slightly disoriented makes worse decisions about heat sources than a person who addressed the situation early. Hypothermia, even mild hypothermia, affects judgment in ways the person experiencing it typically cannot recognize. The best time to prepare was before the last major storm. The second best time is right now, while you're thinking about it and the lights are still on. Write it down, order what you don't have, and put it somewhere you'll find it. Future you, shivering in the dark at midnight during January, will be very glad present you took 30 minutes to sort this out. Now is the time to prepare. Plan ahead to ensure that you and your loved ones have safe ways to stay warm. Virginia Department of Health, January 2026. Most of the mistakes on this list aren't made by reckless people. They're made by people who assumed the situation was manageable, waited a little too long, reached for the wrong solution because it felt logical in the moment, and then found themselves trying to solve a cold weather problem in a cold house without the right tools. That's the pattern. It repeats every winter. It repeats especially hard after major storms, when emergency rooms see surges in hypothermia cases and carbon monoxide poisoning. What's frustrating about all 9 mistakes is that they're avoidable with information and a small amount of preparation. The CO detector that wasn't there could have been there. The generator that was run in the garage could have been run 20 feet away. The family that spread out through 6 cold rooms could have piled into one and been dramatically warmer. The person who drank 2 glasses of bourbon because it felt like it was helping was, physiologically, making the night colder. None of this is complicated. It's information. And information is the thing that's most useful before the storm, most useful before the power goes out, and hardest to act on effectively when you're already cold, tired, and in the dark. If this was useful, share it with someone who might need it, especially going into winter. Hit like and subscribe. This kind of practical information is what this channel is built around, and there is a lot more of it to cover.